Okay, I'm live for a little APUSH Colonial America live hangout and that sort of thing. All right, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put a link on Twitter. All right, let's see. All right, let's see, we've got that. All right, that's there, and let's make sure that that is working. All right, APUSH Colonial America Hangout is there. All right, so let's see what's going on here. How many people do we have here? Still 0 viewers. Okay, so that's not working out so well just so far, but maybe nobody knows we're here. All right, so we're just going to keep on holding back and see what happens. All right. Let's see. All right, still no viewers. All right, we'll see what's going on here. All right, let's see. Somebody liked some kind of video. Okay. Okay, I've got a viewer. All right. Now, the thing is, if you are following me on Twitter, like go ahead and just like ask your question there. I'm typically taking questions on Twitter. So let's go ahead and just kind of get that going. Let's see. So I just need to go ahead and do that. So we've got 3 viewers now. It's kind of hard for me a lot of times to keep up with the conversation here on YouTube, but I will make an effort here to see if I can monitor that as well. All right, so let's see that. So we've got 3 viewers now. All right, let's see. Mute that. All right, I know you're here, Walter White. Oh, it's Layla. Layla is here. All right, that warms my heart. Layla, do you have any questions or anything like that? Let's see. All right, and I think I can like actually interact with people here too. All right. There we go. Oh, I get a little crown by that name. That's kind of cool. All right, so let's see what's going on there. Okay, I need to copy that link. All right. Taking APUSH questions via Twitter. All right, let's see. I don't want to call people twerps. I'm going to call them tweeps. All right, there we go. All right, we always have some little technical difficulties starting off here. I've got 10 viewers. Okay, so the thing is, we've got a few ways to get questions to me. We've got Twitter, we've got YouTube. I can see the chat here that I'll be checking here and there. Now, the thing is, if anybody wants to like actually get on here and ask a question, send me an email or tweet at me or something like that. I will see if I can get you the link, because it would be really cool if somebody were actually going to like get on here and actually ask a question. So go ahead and do that. Oh my goodness, we've got Eric Moses, Miss Simon Sini's class. Is that right? Miss Klein's class is a great group of people. Sent me some almonds, and that was awesome. Always enjoying that California love. I mean, Californians are very good to me. All right, so we've got Margot, who is wanting me to talk about, one of my big supporters on Twitter and Instagram, at Tom Richey. So the thing is, Margot wants to know about the economic system in the Southern colonies. All right, so one of the things here, okay, we've got a few of Miss Klein's class here. Miss Klein's class is awesome, always present tense people. All right, so the thing is, I want to go ahead and answer Margot's question about, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but you're awesome. I know you support me and all that. The economic system of the Southern colonies. So keep in mind that one of the things here, one of the themes is the comparing and contrasting the New England, Middle, and Southern colonies. So the economics of the New England colonies, we're talking about shipping and commerce and naval stores and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas in the Middle colonies, when you get to New York and Pennsylvania, you're talking about more staple crops. All right. When you look at New York and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, you're thinking in terms of family farms and that sort of thing, growing wheat and corn. They called the Middle colonies the breadbasket of the colonies. And then when you get to the Southern colonies, you're dealing with cash crops. All right. During the colonial period, rice and indigo. Now, I know it's kind of hard to think about rice as like some kind of valuable cash crop because you can get it real cheap now, but that wasn't always the case. So keep that in mind, that rice and indigo during the colonial period, it's not until the 19th century during the antebellum period that cotton becomes a big deal. Now, of course, when you go into the Chesapeake colonies, now the Chesapeake colonies, we're talking about Virginia and Maryland, maybe moving into North Carolina a little bit. As far as the crop, you've got tobacco, all right, which tobacco also a major cash crop. So keep that in mind, that the Southern economy, that the economy of the Southern colonies is largely about cash crops. All right, so I've got that. Now, all right, so glad to see Miss Klein's class here, and might have to tweet out to them real quick. Okay, Jada, great to see you tonight, Jada. And Jada has a seminar tomorrow on the first colonizing efforts of America. Hugh, you have no idea. All right, I do a few of these during the year, but when it comes close to the exam, I'm basically broadcasting just about every night. So I will not disappoint you. Hopefully you're in touch with me on Twitter and all that, so you can know all of that. So let me go ahead and let's see. Klein's class is awesome. All right, and if you're following Miss Klein, you saw that. All right, so the first colonizing efforts. Okay, now Columbus, would we really call that a colonizing effort as much as discovery? Now, one thing that you might want to do, one of the things that reasons why I do these live hangouts is to turn people on to my videos. So Jada, keep in mind, I'm going to share the screen with you, and I want to direct you to my playlist. All right, so let me go ahead and do a quick screen share. And I have got an APUSH playlist. You know, if you go to YouTube. All right, if you look for Tom Richey APUSH, you don't have to do it in all caps, it works. You get to U.S. History Review Videos APUSH. All right, so you can go here, and this is a playlist. And this starts with Native American cultures, and then I've got the Spanish, the French, and the Dutch. And so you can see all of those different colonization efforts on that playlist. So you want to keep that in mind, that that resource is there for you, that I've got several videos that would be helpful to you here. Let's see, let me go to this thing so that you can look at the playlist by itself. All right, so if we go to APUSH. Okay, so APUSH review videos. Now I've got an APUSH period 1 review if you want to look at that. But if you look at my AP US history review videos, it's going to load in just a bit. Now what's okay, that's the wrong thing. Okay, so you can see that. All right, so the thing is, what you can see here is I've got lots of videos here that are relevant from different colonies, and also a little bit about deism, which if any of my actual students are watching, keep that in mind, that you'll want to watch that video, because we didn't quite get to that. All right, so we want to stop screen sharing, and let's see if that question got any more specific in a way that I can address that. Let me go ahead and take a quick look there. And if anybody can, you know, keep me in touch on the UNC USC, like North Carolina South Carolina football game, hoping the Tar Heels will get into that. Okay, so let's see. So keep in mind that if we can make Jada, if you can make that question a little more specific, I might be able to get to it. But keep in mind the videos and such. All right, so we've got that. All right, Jacob Holdaway is on Twitter. I think that's great. All right, so the thing is, Layla, you want me to elaborate on the restoration colonies. All right. Now, the restoration colonies, for people like Layla who took AP Euro last year, there's Charles II. All right. The English monarchy is restored. And of course, Charles II was the merry monarch. He had like all of these women and illegitimate children and all of that kind of stuff. Restless he rolls about. All of that kind of stuff. Oh my goodness, am I freezing or okay? Y'all let me know if this freezes up. I'm hoping that that is not the case. All right, so the thing is, looks like we're good. Hi, Jake. All right, so Charles II takes over. And there are a few things that happen. Okay, so first of all, there's the matter of Pennsylvania, because Charles II was always broke, all right, because, he couldn't live within his means and all of that kind of stuff. And so William Penn was a Quaker whose father had been an influential admiral. And, so Admiral Penn had loaned money to the crown, and he was one of the big supporters of the restored monarchy. Now, Charles II never had any money to pay anybody back. And so William Penn had this idea. Well, how about instead of paying me back, then you can give me this otherwise worthless land, like all this old big old wooded area, and that'll be my colony. And Charles II's like, wait, I can get out of paying you back, and I can get rid of these Quakers who think they're equal to me and who I find very annoying. You've got it. All right. So Pennsylvania is a restoration colony. Now, the Carolinas are another restoration colony where he's giving this colony to his friends, the Lords Proprietors. John Locke wrote, the Constitution for this colony. Now, those are both proprietary colonies. So you want to keep in mind that there are three types of colonies. There's a royal colony that is administered by the crown directly. There is a proprietary colony, which is administered by the proprietor. Now, a proprietor is someone who owns the colony, like a restaurant has a proprietor, someone who is in charge. That person owns the restaurant. And then you have a joint stock or corporate colony. All right. So as far as that goes, now another restoration colony would be New York, which, the Anglo-Dutch War was going on. And the English took that colony of New Netherland and made that into an English colony. And then they gave the Dutch something in South America to trade. I've got my Dutch shirt on here. I didn't realize that was a trade. Like when I took U.S. history, it's like, oh, yeah, the British just came and took it. But it was really kind of a switcheroo thing. But regardless, you have, more people, there, the British take over, New York and turn that into a British colony named for the Duke of York, the future James II. All right, so those are the restoration colonies, and those are just the colonies that are, founded after the restoration of the monarchy. All right. So we got a little bit of that going. All right. School started a week early. My goodness, hash slinging slasher. Right? Be careful with that. Already on the revolution. Well, we'll get there. I don't mind doing that. Malone, great minds think alike. I didn't even see your question. Maybe I did, and I just did. That we're on the same wavelength or something. I don't know. But I have already answered your question. Proprietary, royal, and joint stock. Now, an example of a joint stock colony would be Virginia, and that's where you have a company like the Virginia Company. And this is something that is chartered. Like James the First chartered the Virginia Company so that these people could actually make money, and that way the king doesn't actually have to put funds into the colony. So Virginia was a royal colony, a joint stock or corporate colony, depending on what test you're taking or how they refer to it. And then after the 1622 Indian Massacre, then the crown took over that colony. All right. So sometimes colonies would move from one to the other. If the crown decides to take over colony, not a whole lot you can do about that. All right. Hi, Jake. And I think that we have run out of questions. I mean, the thing is, we're still getting there are some people haven't even started school yet. So there are some people in the revolution, and then there are some people that don't start school until next week. So I'm doing this hangout kind of early like. So anybody else with questions and stuff, because I'm not seeing anything here, not seeing anything on Twitter. This might be, shortest live hangout ever or something like that. Let's see if anything comes up here. All right, check that out. All right, that is awesome. All right, so you have DJ Frostbite 3 and Jimmy Weaver promoting my stuff. All right, that's awesome. All right. So let's see. How's that? How? Oh, I've got some activity on Twitter. Okay, so that's great. Let's look into that. All right. So some new notifications here. That's just people favoriting and stuff. Okay. Let's see. How many people do we have here? All right, we got 12 people. I mean, there we go. All right, so do we see anything? Okay, it would be totally cool if I could explain the relationship between the Spanish and the Aztecs. I'm confused how they felt about each other. Jada, I'm just going to go on a limb and say that they didn't like each other very much. So that's the thing. The Aztecs, all right, you've got the conquistadors. You're probably not going to see a whole lot of that on the exam, but as far as this goes, I mean, the Aztecs controlled an empire in modern day Mexico, and when the Spanish landed, that was the dominant power. And so, really, for the Spanish, it was a conquest, you know, a takeover of these, you know, people who were there. And so, really, you've got an exploiter, an exploiting power that's already there. And then there is another exploiting power that comes in and institutes a labor system, the encomienda, which is really not fundamentally different than the labor system that was already in place under the Aztecs. So the thing is, there's something with the Spanish that they call the Black Legend. There are people like Father Bartolome de las Casas, who was a priest who wrote some really nasty things about the Spanish, okay, like these people are awful, that sort of thing, which not that they were kind to the Indians and that sort of thing, but a lot of historians look back and they think, well, De las Casas had some motives here, some ulterior motives. Not that he was lying or anything, but when we look at POV and we're trying to figure out like how to look at a source in terms of POV, when somebody is a priest who wants to evangelize the Indians, well, he is going to be upset when something's going on that is going to make the Indians less susceptible to evangelization. Okay, if the Spanish are not being kind to the Indians, then he loses out. Now, of course, he's genuinely concerned for the well-being of the Indians, you know, bodies and souls and that sort of thing. But keep in mind that he isn't somebody who is detached from the situation, that he's somebody who has an ulterior motive. So just keep that in mind. Now, what was the main difference between the New England and Chesapeake colonies in the early 1700s? All right, now the thing is, you've got to keep in mind that the Chesapeake colonies, now, of course, getting into the 18th century, that's changing a little bit, but the New England colonies, you are getting into, you know, people are going there for religious reasons, by and large. Okay, not, you know, religious freedom, because you got Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson and all of that kind of stuff. But as far as, you know, why they went there, they want to practice their religion. And religion was very central in setting these colonies up. Now, the Chesapeake colonies, it's hard to categorize all of them because one of those is Maryland. Maryland was started by Lord Baltimore. And Lord Baltimore, of course, wants to create a haven for Catholics. So Lord Baltimore established toleration for all Trinitarian Christians. Now, the only colony with a more generous policy of toleration was Pennsylvania, which William Penn founded with no established religion. You can be whatever religion you want because Quakers didn't believe in force. Most of the colonies had some sort of established church. Now, in Virginia, which would be foremost among the Chesapeake colonies, you're looking at people who went over there not for religious reasons, but for you know, religious reasons, but for reasons of making money. That they're going over there. At first, they think they're going to find gold, but they are farming these cash crops. So New England is about religion at first, and of course, evolves into an economy based on commerce and shipping and fishing and timber and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the Chesapeake colonies are into growing cash crops and that sort of thing. Oh my goodness, that Yutzi guy is here. I was thinking, what kind of question is that? And then I saw who was asking it. Warms my heart. Okay, what is an America? Could you explain how that will be on the AP exam? Thank you, Yutzi. I need a laugh. Not my actual students. I don't know if any of them are here, but at least one of my alumni, and he passed his exam. That's awesome. All right. So Layla, I would argue that really every source is biased. All right. And of course, when we say biased or biased, and we're like, oh, he biased, I mean, oh, he's so biased. And remember, we've got to say that not only that someone's biased, but how they're biased. And that's the thing that you've got to understand that everybody has a point of view. But in this case, generally, his credibility. Now, one thing that would make him credible is that he's actually there, okay? That he's actually seeing a lot of these things. And so, if you want to say that he's credible, now some people would say that he's a priest. So, a priest generally strives to tell the truth and that sort of thing. But when it comes down to it, I think that when you look at a lot of the things that he's saying, like he's really, and the thing is, if somebody wanted to say the worst things about me, then they could come out with a lot of bad stuff, but not necessarily give the whole picture. So what you've got to understand about De las Casas is he's writing with an agenda, that he has a very clear agenda that he wants to change Spanish colonial policy. And he did end up having some success with that, but he does have a motive when he's writing. He's not somebody just kind of passively documenting what's going on. So in that sense, he does have a bias or a point of view. Now, does that make him totally incredible? That's up to you. But I certainly, when I teach De las Casas, I talk about him as far as somebody who needs to be taken with a grain of salt, that you need to look at, kind of look into his motives and read through that lens. And that's really kind of the art of POV analysis. All right, Ileana is here. All right, we got a veteran here telling y'all to listen to Mr. Richey. All right, Ileana, thank you so much. Actually, one of my tutoring clients from last year. Keep in mind that I also do AP tutoring, and that's another thing. If you're like, hey, I need tutoring. Hey, talk to me. Let's get a tutoring plan started. That'd be awesome. Okay, Nico is asking about the importance of the French and Indian War. All right, Peyton, thank you so much. Peyton is tweeting. She's got a picture of me on Twitter. I'm gonna go ahead and retweet that. So that's awesome. All right, gave me a shout out here. All right, so let's figure out Nico's question. All right, and then we will get to the Wizardly Crusader over there. Nico is asking about the French and Indian War. All right, now as far as the importance of the French and Indian War, it's what starts off. Now, this is really like, I'll do another live hangout where I'll probably talk about more of this stuff and focus on that. But as far as the chain of events leading to the American Revolution, the French and Indian War is key because it gets the process started. Before the French and Indian War, you've really got the period of colonial America. Now, of course, I hate how the APUSH exam names these periods after numbers, like period 1, period 2, period 3. Drives me absolutely nuts, up the wall. But there is a reason that the so-called period 3 starts at 1754, okay? Starts at the French and Indian War, because what happens here is that before the French and Indian War, the British largely left the colonies alone. It's a turning point. And when we think about, it's what, when we look at those historical thinking skills and all of that kind of stuff, one of them is identifying turning points and taking a look at what happened before and after. So when we think about, if we've got a comparison, LEQ, then you're thinking in terms of what was different about the colonies before and after the French and Indian War. And what's different about the colonies before is that there's salutary neglect. All right, it's the kind of neglect, now salutary, salute, it's the kind of neglect you appreciate. Y'all are in 11th grade, most of you. So if your parents said, we're going away for the weekend, here's some money, we're going to leave it on the counter, don't starve, you know, don't have any parties that are too wild or anything, don't get arrested, we'll see in a few days. You're not going to say like, hey, mom, dad, you neglected me. That's no fair. I want you to stay here. No, you're not going to say that. You're going to be glad that they left, more than likely. And so, I mean, I always was. And, you know, this is salutary neglect. This is good neglect. The colonies were largely able to do whatever they wanted. And this included violating the Navigation Acts, these acts of navigation that were passed to really institute, at least in the law, in the legislative sense, a mercantilist system. But if the laws are on the books that you have to trade with British colonies, then if they're not enforcing those laws, you can really trade with anyone you want. Well, the French and Indian War kind of changed things because the British were in debt, and they felt like that the colonies were partially responsible and they needed to pay their fair share. Now, they can't have any say in that either. So Parliament passes various taxes, and then Parliament says, you know what? We want to keep a standing army, but people in England don't like standing armies. So you know what? We're going to send our soldiers to the colonies, and you are going to pay for them, and you're going to, you know, you're going to house them, quarter them, all of that kind of stuff. So the thing is that what you're looking at with the French and Indian War is that you have a clamping down, you know, starting with the proclamation line of 1763, where the British are told you can't go past the Appalachian Mountains. You know, they're like, look, why all these restrictions? So it sets the stage for the creation of tension between the colonies. And that's what's really important about the French and Indian War, is not so much you know, what it did as far as what happened during the war, which is inconsequential for U.S. history, but really more of the turning point aspect. Now, Nico, this is a great example of this question here. Why is it called the 7 Years' War if it's actually 9 years? All right. Now, since we're an APUSH, we don't have to call it the 7 Years' War anymore. All right. And as far as why, you know, that's like way outside the scope of the exam. I appreciate that you're thinking about that stuff. But this is where at a certain point, especially with this new exam format. Now, those of you coming from AP Euro, you've probably heard about this redesigned exam, which Euro has now as well. But this new exam is less heavy on little facts and that sort of thing, and heavier on skills and that sort of thing. So just keep in mind that, you know, this is something now, Nico, if you Google this and you find the answer, let me know, because that is very fascinating. Because 17, oh, you know what it is? I'm betting that it's the treaty, because the treaty was signed in 1763, but I'm going to guess you've got a cessation of hostilities in 1761. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So let me know if I was correct on that, but keep that in mind that most of the time the hostilities would end before the actual treaty was signed. Sometimes, you know, even more than you know, even more than a year or two before that. All right, and keep in mind that, I mean, we've got some people here. I'm still taking and answering questions. Tell your friends. We've got like 15 people here. Of course, a lot of schools are starting next week, but, you know, I've got a few more questions. So we've got questions from Wizardly Crusader and Ice Q Man 101 and Eric. Eric, I've definitely seen you online, so good to see you. All right, so how was George Whitefield an essential figure during the Great Awakening? Now, the Great Awakening is something that I really want to do an e-lecture on at some point. You know, I've got some e-lectures kind of ready to go as far as slides and stuff, but it's just been a lot to do going with the first of the year and all that. So keep that in mind, that I will be getting some new videos out there, but I wanted to do a live hangout tonight, let y'all know that I'm still alive and such. The two most important figures of the Great Awakening, the first Great Awakening, are George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards. All right. Now, George Whitefield was actually an English minister. One thing that's important to note about the Great Awakening is not only was it a big religious movement, revival movement in the colonies, or in a section of the colonies, or even throughout the colonies, but this was something that was a phenomenon that swept the English-speaking world. So this was going on in Britain as well. All right, Stephen Justice, send me an email on that and let me, they're probably, if any of the PowerPoints are private, it's because they suck or something. But yeah, send me an email about which one you're talking about. That's one of my actual students, so I need to interrupt for that. All right, Stephen Justice, glad to see you, man. Justice League for the win. All right. So anyway, George Whitefield was from England. Now, if you look at pictures of him, he was kind of a interesting looking guy, and by that I mean kind of funny looking. He had a cross eye. Like, this guy had like all of these people like coming to see him, but if you look at like pictures of him, like one of his eyes is crossed. And like George Whitefield comes in here and he is just like this revival preaching. All right, I mean, it's just like, you're going to hell. And the thing is, for some reason, people over there are like, man, like, this is awesome. Like, you know, we're used to going to church and somebody's like, oh, well, this comes from the original Greek of, you know, kairos, and this means this. And if you look at this gospel versus this gospel, and I went to Harvard and I'm very well educated, even though I am putting you to sleep. And then there is this guy who is just, hellfire and damnation, burn, 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 you're going to hell unless you repent and convert, or burn. Whew, that was intense. Now, this guy, he would just be ranting and raving. I mean, he could speak like Benjamin Franklin, who was a deist. You know, wasn't even like into like all of this like religiosity stuff and all of that kind of stuff. And what's going on here is he's going to see him just because he's entertained by him. He's like, this guy is a good speaker. And when it came down to it, like, Whitefield would always call for like you know, an offering at the end. He had this orphanage in Georgia that he was supporting. You know, sure, he put a little bit of his own pocket. I mean, he deserves it after turning out crowds of thousands. But the thing is, Ben Franklin was just like, wow, I mean, this guy is just really motivating people. Like, this country's getting religious all of a sudden. Because keep in mind, outside of New England, nobody really came to America for religion except like a few Quakers and that sort of thing. And, you know, all of the sudden, the country is just getting religiously energized. And while Jonathan Edwards was really more kind of unique to New England, because he was one of the few Great Awakening preachers who was at a church. Most of your Great Awakening preachers were itinerant preachers, preachers who didn't have a home church. They're just going places. And a lot of times they preach in open air and would just go around. And so the thing is that Whitefield's revivals would attract thousands in every city that he went to. So that's why Whitefield was so important, was because, I mean, this guy could like speak to a crowd of thousands before like microphone technology and all of that kind of stuff. And what you need to keep in mind about the Great Awakening is that it divides the colonies. Just like today, when you see like different churches, like some people like to go to a very traditional church. They would like to see a minister who has a doctorate. They would like to go to church with other educated people and that sort of thing. They want to be seen at church. You know, you've got, you know, I mean, churches tend to attract like-minded people. And then there's somebody who goes to church for their kids. There's somebody who goes to church to think, someone else who goes to church to feel, someone else who's like, man, the light show is better at this church than that one. All right. Or I like the food better or whatever. But the thing is, we all have different ideas about what church is. And the Great Awakening was, it was something that, you know, if you look at megachurch culture today, that, you know, these churches reach out to people who are not reached by conventional churches. And this is the same thing that people like Whitefield and Edwards were doing with this more emotional type of preaching. And it met a lot of resistance from the established classes. There were a lot of people who would not even let Whitefield, like churches would not let Whitefield in because they didn't like this kind of preaching. They thought that Whitefield, you know, was fraudulent and that sort of thing. So that's the thing. Got a picture there. All right. So Nico found his deal there. Yes, Layla has found a picture of Whitefield in her textbook, cross-eye and all. Okay. So yes, he is in some of those textbooks. That is great. All right. So the thing is, that's Whitefield. And Ice Q Man 101. Okay, how did taxes play a major part in U.S. independence? Now, of course, a lot of this is the fight over taxes, which I've got a lecture on that. If you look at the APUSH, you know, at the APUSH thing that I showed y'all a little bit earlier, I want to direct your attention to that. Oh my Lord, the Gamecocks won. My goodness. All right. Well, anyway, I guess that, you know, that it happens. But if you look, there are two videos that I want to draw your attention to that are on my playlist. Let me just go ahead and share my screen with you real quick. For any of you who are in the so-called period 3, that time leading the American Revolution, Parliament taxes the colonies and the road to revolution. So these are, you know, I've pretty much got these things in order, but this is a 2-part lecture series on the events leading up to the Revolutionary War. Both of those together are about a half hour, 18 minutes and then 10 minutes. But what I do in those lectures is I go through the whole long train of abuses that is, you know, mentioned by Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, and I take you through the whole thing. All right, so we look at the entire, you know, process, and I go through it pretty much line by line. So I would refer you to that lecture in the sense of that. Okay, so so Ice Q Man, make sure you watch that lecture. Be sure to watch the ads. Okay, I know Layla and her friends in California always watch the ads as they've told me. So so that's great. All right. Hey Dick Carlisle, how you doing? All right, glad you like the Whitefield impersonation. Noob boy swag, okay, which swag is a good thing. Noob, I don't know, is that a good thing now? Is noob come around to me? I don't know. Okay, well, we'll figure out what that means. If you got a question, go ahead and ask. Let's see, Eric, how did Puritan customs influence the development of the New England colonies? Maybe you want to be a little bit more, you know, a little bit more specific on that. But now, one thing that I would say as far as, you know, the New England colonies, that you've got these Calvinists, these Puritans and separatists, you've got a much more religious culture, like the last two states. Now, keep in mind that although the Bill of Rights said that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, that it didn't mean that the states had to follow that at the time. Now, of course, they do now, as interpreted through the selective incorporation of the 14th Amendment. But at that time, before the Civil War and the 14th Amendment, the states could have established churches, and Massachusetts and Connecticut were the last two states to have established churches. Jefferson wrote from Vermont when he went up on his, he and Madison went up on their botany expedition, or whatever we would call it. When they went up there, they went to Vermont, and Jefferson wrote that the state of Vermont forbade travel on Sundays back then. So when you look at New England, religion definitely influenced it. John Winthrop, one of the earliest political leaders in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, talked about the idea of a city on a hill. that this is going to be an example for the whole world. So you see that, religion really defines this. Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson are exiled because their ideas about religion didn't really go along with the ideas held by the community. Of course, there was the Halfway Covenant, which was passed, in Massachusetts. This allowed people like in the next generation who weren't as fervent into the church. It allowed them a form of partial church membership, so you can get your kid baptized, but you don't necessarily have to personally have a conversion experience. So keep in mind that it doesn't necessarily stay as religious as when it started, but certainly that leaves its mark on this area. All right, and can I discuss some major events within period 2? Malone, you have not heard my period rant. This is something that I think is just a travesty. All right. Now, I mean, the thing is, the whole idea of just saying period 1, period 2, period 3, period 4. I don't think that's history. I think that the APUS history exam has really done us a disservice by having these numbers. Now, of course, we live within that context, but when I'm doing Q&A and when I'm doing videos and that sort of thing, I would much prefer to have like a question about specifics. Okay, so what would you consider specifics in like the 17th century or something like that? So I'd rather discuss answer specific questions. And please, because if you get out in the world and refer to period 2, remember that the whole idea of taking this course is to be generally knowledgeable and conversant about U.S. history. So what I can see here, what advice can you give? Okay, all right, this is good. All right, so Jacob is asking a question about the DBQ. Now, Jacob, I don't know if you've seen my DBQ trilogy. Go ahead and type to me. You can tell me if you've seen this already, but this is actually my newest video series. I did this a few weeks ago, and I just want to draw everybody's attention to it because I'm really fond of it, and I want it to continue to climb. If we put in APUSH DBQ, all right, now I am attempting. Okay, so it's getting up there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so those are ads up there. I'm sharing my screen. I've got the new AP History DBQ. Okay, so I need your help with this. It's a 3-part series. Now, what I did here, it's a trilogy, and it's got it's riddled with Lord of the Rings references. All right, and what I'm doing here, you can tell your friends that are taking AP Euro as well. What I'm doing here is I'm going through the new DBQ rubric and point by point showing you exactly what to do. Now, as far, the Lord of the Rings bids are funny. All right, so great. All right, so we've got that. All right, so as far as that goes, what advice can I give you? All right, now, Jacob, I don't know if you have, if you've taken AP Euro, because a lot of that stuff you can pretty much apply from AP Euro. But as far as purpose, all you're doing now on at least 4 documents on a DBQ, you have to go into the POV, or what I call CAP, context, audience, purpose. All right, so POV is looking at the point of view of the author and how the author's own personal prejudices or circumstances might affect this. I'll do some more in-depth stuff on that at another time. Now, as far as context, if you can take the document, and what you're doing is the document is a tree. Context is putting that tree into a forest. And so you're giving me the stuff around the document, and you're showing me that you know where the document comes from and that sort of thing, okay? So then when we're thinking about audience, how is this person playing to their audience? So, for example, we would treat a document differently that was like a government document that was being, like even an internal memo or a government document being posted in public. Or we would think in terms of perhaps, a speech given to a crowd versus, like, let's say that we had a sermon by George Whitefield. And then we had a diary entry or a journal, right? So do guys write diaries? I don't know, but I don't want to appear sexist or anything like that. So let's just call it a diary. All right. And so the thing is, if you're thinking about like George Whitefield's diary, we would look at that differently because he's writing that to an audience of himself. And so when I look at that diary, I'm thinking, well, that is for him. And so I can assume that he is being completely honest with this. Like, these are his thoughts, because it's not designed to impress anybody. Whereas a public speech may be designed to impress someone, like Abraham Lincoln, who is one of the most gifted politicians ever to be in the White House. When he was running for Senate in Illinois, like, I mean, Richard Hofstadter in the American political tradition, great book for anybody wanting to make a five. But that Abraham Lincoln, depending on where he was speaking, he would say different things because he knew that these different crowds wanted to hear him say different things. So that's why sometimes Lincoln's pronouncements are kind of hard to pin down, because Lincoln was always keenly aware of his audience. This is a guy who wrote in public editorial for a newspaper in September of 1862, when or maybe it was August, but it was like, right before he had the Emancipation Proclamation in his desk. And he said, look, if I could win this war freeing all the slaves, I'd do it. If I could win this war freeing no slaves, I'd do it. If I could win this war freeing some of the slaves and leaving others in bondage, I would do that. Because the reason I fight this war is to save this union. Now, the thing is, here's a guy who already knows that he is about to make the war about slavery, but he also knows he's got the border states to worry about and that sort of thing. I mean, Lincoln was like the ultimate political pragmatist, even though we kind of put him on a pedestal as somebody that was like some sort of idealist. Nothing could be further from the truth. So the thing is that when you're looking at that, that is what you're thinking about when you're thinking about audience. And then purpose. Why is this person writing this? What is the person's motive for writing this? What is the person seeking to accomplish? So you've got really 4 options for document analysis, and you can take any one of those. You can use the same one every time. If you find out that, if you think like, hey, I'm really good at doing it this way, then stick with what you're good at, and that sort of thing. All right, so we've got that. All right. Oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. LEC asking about 1848 and American ideals of nationalism. That does not sound like something that would go on the APUSH exam, but at the same time, a very compelling question. Something that I might address at some point. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting, Chiavelli, is that the only person, well, not the only person, but the most high-profile person to be executed for war crimes after the Civil War was the Confederate commandant at the Andersonville prison. And he was what you would call a 48er. He was from Austria and moved to the United States and settled in the South. And he became an officer in the Confederate military, and he was found guilty of war crimes having to do with Andersonville prison. Now, keep in mind that this was a guy who once sent like some of the Union prisoners. He sent like 5 prisoners up north. So he sent them up there. He said, go tell your government to ransom the prisoners, like to get these people out of here, exchange, do whatever you can, because we can't feed them. So this guy was, kind of, scapegoated more than anything when it comes down to it. But it's kind of interesting that the most high profile Confederate that was, convicted of war crimes, and really one of very few people convicted of war crimes, but the most high-profile one wasn't even a Southerner. I mean, he was from Austria. As far as influencing American nationalism, there have been some arguments made that one of the things leading up to the Civil War. Now, of course, when it comes to the Civil War, people like things simple. They're like, oh, what was the Civil War about? Was the Civil War about slavery or not? Yes or no? All right, and that's all people want to hear. whereas history is about complexity. And one of the things really leading up to the Civil War, you know, when you look at trends in Europe toward nationalism, there are some arguments that have been made that in the American South, you start to see this idea of Southern nationalism. Whereas if you look at, you know, Lincoln, for example, Lincoln's nationalism is more of a, well, nationalism. So, you know, you've got really some kind of competing ideas of nationalism there behind the Civil War. And he makes the Civil War, you know, about slavery. He never says that the Civil War is anything but a war to save the Union. All right. So for Abraham Lincoln, you know, he conceived the United States not as a Confederate Union of sovereign states or a compact of sovereign states, but he saw this as a nation. And this is something that kind of started out with Daniel Webster and kind of gained currency. Now, of course, at the same time, the U.S. Senate in 1860 passed a series of resolutions saying that the United States Constitution is a compact between the states. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. How's the picture going? Is the picture all right, or is you know, it fading out? Y'all let me know if there's any kind of lag or anything like that. So you know, that sort of thing. So Chevelle, I hope that I have answered your question, because you know, you've certainly been great to me on Twitter and Instagram and all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully that was answered for you and all of that stuff. Oh, got your Teen Potter stuff going on. You probably know what a pensieve is. You know, some of my like APUSH students didn't even know what a pensieve was. I'm here trying to use that as an example. Like, oh yeah, you know, it's kind of like a pensieve. And people are like, what? And okay, so there is a little bit of lag. Let me see what I can do here as far as that goes. Let me okay, I'm going to go to low bandwidth, hopefully get rid of the lag, and you know, just you know, the picture quality is going to be a little less, but that'll at least you know, hopefully have us to where we're not dealing with lag. So let me know if that's better. Okay, this is looking better. I'm not seeing as much indication of lag here. So there we go. Okay, thank you, Denora, for letting me know about that. And Denora, I will do some AP Euro Hangout soon. I'm not sure about this weekend, but certainly, you know, in the next week or two, I'll do some kind of, you know, Renaissance, Reformation, that sort of thing. You know, so, you know, still making sure that I, you know, have love for all of my, you know, Euro peeps and all of that kind of stuff. All right, I'm hearing from Denora. Let's see, we've got a few other people, the middle colonies, some of the political characteristics. Now we've got the witchcraft phenomenon. Layla, that's probably not going to figure on the exam that much. Sean, I have already talked about New England and the Chesapeake colonies like already like twice. So if you'll scroll through like the, you know, where we've already been, I will get to that. I will get to that somewhere. Let's see. So as far as that goes, yeah, so the witchcraft phenomenon, you know, that really, you know, yeah, it really hasn't come up as much to the point where I don't really teach it enough to be any more familiar with it than the average bear or anything like that. I'm Denora's go-to videos after school. That is awesome. Okay, I am glad to hear that, Denora, and I'll try to get some more recorded for you. All right, we've got 19 people here, but I'm not hearing a lot of questions. We're nearing 10 o'clock, so unless we you know, get some question traffic going, I'm probably going to be checking out pretty soon. But if this was helpful to you, be sure, you know, let your friends know about my videos, you know, and I try to do what I can to help people out and you know, to get on here and answer questions. So if this has been helpful to you, just make sure your friends know about me and you know about these resources that I'm trying to provide and all of that kind of stuff. All right, let me go ahead and put out the last call for you know, questions and that sort of thing. I'm going to check Twitter again and kind of see what's going on here. All right, and Denora, you weren't already following me, but you are following me now, so I sure appreciate that. All right, so Denoris, follow me on Twitter. Leave a like. That's right. Leave a like. That's right, Eric Moses. Make sure to leave a like on your way out. Jacob thinks I'm the real MVP. Tell your friends. So that's they're definitely glad for that. All right. So anybody else going to go ahead and just kind of put the last call out there for questions? All right. Talk about what you haven't talked about. Whatever you think is important during the colonial period. I think I've pretty much hit most of this. I mean, now the thing is that the so-called period one is only about like 5% of the exam, or at least that's what they say. A lot of the important stuff for this unit, like for the so-called period 1 and 2, when you're getting to the before the French and Indian War, what we're really looking at, I've got a lot of videos that address a lot of the truly important content, because what you're looking at is you want to make sure that you're familiar with the different groups of Indians, all right, that you realize there was diversity, that you realize that some of them practiced agriculture and they weren't all hunting and gathering. Some of them lived in settled communities. So if you haven't watched that lecture, make sure you watch that, the one on Native American cultures. It's the first on the APUSH playlist. So I want you to make sure that you've done that. Another thing is making sure that you can compare and contrast the different colonial powers, the Spanish, the French, and the Dutch, and the English. Now, I've already made videos about this, so, I kind of have, focus stuff on what I haven't made videos about. But I want you to, just take a look at that, and, that'll help you. But some stuff I haven't addressed during the Hangout, I've addressed in videos. So one of the reasons I do these Hangouts is to have hiccups or all that kind of stuff. But yes, all right, live inspired. Oh wait, live inspired. Like, whoa, hey, that's like one of those. Yeah, live inspired follows me on Twitter, even though her friends don't, but they still like change their names on Twitter to me or something like that. That was like, oh my goodness, what in the world is going on there? So good to see live inspired 99 here. Make sure you tell your friends about me. But I guess they already know, even though they're sketchy people. All right, but yes, Kevin, I am finally home, and it's good to be back, and I'm really looking forward to making some videos soon, because it's just a lot of stuff with the start of school. Like when you're a student, there's a lot, but when you're a teacher, there's a lot too. Patent land shortages in the 18th century. I'm not even sure what you're talking about here now, unless somebody's trying to buy some land in Tidewater, Virginia, or something like that. Then that would be a problem, perhaps, because there's maybe a scarcity of land right there by the coast. You've got things like Bacon's Rebellion that happened because of that. But as far as a shortage of land, that just seems a little bit bizarre. Now, you could also be talking about the Proclamation of 1763. So I'm not sure. You'd have to kind of tell me, exactly what it is that you're getting at there. So just let me know what kind of, if you've got anything more specific. Kind of looking at Twitter, see if I can find anything else, and what's going on there and that sort of thing. All right, so let's see what else we've got there. Okay, again, last call, perhaps. Let's just make sure that we're that I'm getting to everybody. Want to make sure all of that stuff is happening. All right, so anybody else? All right, I got 10:02. We're going to do a lot more of these because it's a good thing for for people to to be able to dialogue and that sort of thing. All right. Preseason Dolphins Bucks. Robert's a good guy. I mean, I could see I could see that that happening. Collaborative videos just can be kind of difficult sometimes And especially like, you know, Robert teaches middle school and I teach high school and that sort of thing. So, you know, that's something that, you know, sometimes like as far as doing a video together, presents some challenges, but definitely a big fan of his work. And yeah, I should get him on here sometime, if for nothing else, like a live hangout or something like that. Peyton, I'm just going to say, like, as far as what you're talking about, like land shortages in New England and that sort of thing, I would question whether that's really essential exam content. Keep in mind that what we're dealing with is a survey level course in U.S. history. So you want to make sure that you never get so bogged down in minutia that you forget about like the stuff that's, you know, really important. So just keep that in mind in that sort of thing. All right. Oh, wow. Okay. Denora, you are an AP Euro student. I didn't realize that, but you're watching the APUSH thing. So great. I think that's awesome. All right. So Denora, thanks for the follow and all of that kind of stuff. And everybody else here that is, you know, here and all of that kind of stuff. You know, Kevin and Peyton and Paulina and all of these other people. All right, everybody. Well, it is 10 o'clock Eastern time. And, you know, it looks like we've kind of slowed down and we've got a lot of great people here. And we will, yeah, just go ahead and call that a night. Maybe sometime Nicole will actually join us from out in California. Haven't heard from her in a while, at least on the live hangout circuit. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, remember, yeah, see, Layla, I hadn't forgotten about my friends in California. You know, I was just talking about y'all. All right, so yeah, thank you. All right, peace out, everybody. That's awesome. All right, there we go. So yeah, all right, watch my videos, watch the ads. Bye, Eric.